The cold wind blew across the barren landscape of the alien planet. It was a place where only the strongest survived. A world where towering mountains met thick forests, and violent storms swept through the skies. This was the home of the Atherans, a race of fierce Amazonian women known across the galaxy for their strength and warrior spirit. To most, this planet was a place to avoid, a place where only the bravest dared to venture. Captain Marcus Hawk had heard the rumors. The Atherans were said to be ruthless, fierce, and nearly impossible to defeat. Yet his mission was clear. He had been sent to establish contact with their leader, hoping to form an alliance between Earth and the Atheran people. He wasn't afraid, but he knew it would be a challenge. Marcus's ship touched down on the planet's surface with a gentle thud. The cockpit's lights flickered, and the cold metal of the spacecraft creaked as he unbuckled his seatbelt. His mission was more important than ever, and he needed to be cautious. Stepping out into the alien terrain, Marcus adjusted his gear and surveyed his surroundings. The planet was silent, almost too quiet, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. It didn't take long for him to spot the Atheran patrol. They appeared like shadows among the trees, moving swiftly and silently. The Amazonian warriors were everywhere, tall, muscular, and powerful. They wore minimal armor, their bodies adorned with intricate tattoos that told stories of their victories and conquests. They carried massive weapons, their eyes fierce with an intensity that could strike fear into anyone who dared to cross them. Marcus stood tall, trying to maintain his composure as he stepped forward. One of the warriors, a woman with dark red hair and piercing blue eyes, stepped out from the shadows and approached him. Her presence was commanding, and Marcus instantly felt the weight of her gaze. "You are far from home, human," she said, her voice a low growl. "Why are you here?" Marcus didn't flinch. He had prepared for this moment. "I am Captain Marcus Hawk, sent from Earth. I seek peace and an alliance with your people," he said, his voice steady. The Amazonian woman looked him over, clearly unimpressed. "Your people come with promises of peace, but we have heard little of your true intentions," she said, her tone harsh. "You will not leave this planet alive unless you prove your worth." Before Marcus could respond, the woman signaled, and several other Atheran warriors surrounded him. The atmosphere grew tense, and Marcus knew he had to think fast. His mission was delicate, and he couldn't afford to fail now. The woman's gaze softened for a moment. "You are bold, human, but I don't think you fully understand the dangers of our world." She motioned for her warriors to stand down. "Come with me. The Queen will decide your fate." Marcus didn't resist. He had little choice. As he was escorted through the dense forest, he couldn't help but wonder about the Queen she had mentioned. Who was this mysterious leader, and why was she so feared by everyone? The journey felt endless, and the only sounds were the crunching of leaves beneath their boots and the occasional rustle of creatures in the trees. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they arrived at a massive stone fortress, surrounded by towering walls. It was here that the Atheran Queen resided, and it was clear that Marcus was about to meet a force like no other. As the massive doors opened, Marcus took a deep breath and prepared himself. His encounter with the Amazonian Queen would be the true test of his mission. He knew one thing for sure: this would be no ordinary negotiation. Captain Marcus Hawk followed the Atheran warrior through the massive stone doors, entering the heart of the fortress. The air inside was thick with the scent of incense, and the walls were lined with banners depicting ancient battles and victories. The deep echoes of their footsteps filled the quiet halls as they approached a grand throne room. As they entered, Marcus's eyes were drawn to the towering figure sitting at the far end of the room. She was unlike any woman he had ever seen before. The Atheran Queen, taller than any human, sat on her throne with an aura of power and authority. Her skin was a deep bronze, her long black hair braided with gold threads. Her piercing green eyes locked onto Marcus, studying him as though he were nothing more than an insect. "Who dares to step into my presence?" Her voice was like thunder, and even the Atheran warriors behind Marcus stood at attention, their gazes lowered. The warrior who had escorted Marcus stepped forward and bowed. "My queen, this is Captain Marcus Hawk, a human from the distant planet Earth. He seeks an alliance with our people." The queen's eyes narrowed as she studied Marcus. "An alliance?" she repeated, her voice laced with skepticism. "What makes you believe that the mighty Aetherans would consider such an offer?" Marcus held his ground, despite the pressure in the room. He could feel the intensity of the queen's gaze, but he knew that this was his only chance. He had to convince her, or his mission would end before it even began. "We are a growing civilization, Your Majesty," Marcus said calmly. "We seek peace with all races in the galaxy. Together, we could share knowledge, technology, and strength. Earth is a valuable ally, and I believe we could offer something to benefit your people as well." The queen's lips curled into a small, amused smile. She rose from her throne, her presence more imposing as she stood before Marcus. The Atheran warriors stepped back, watching closely, as if waiting for something to happen. "You speak of peace, human," the queen said, her voice low and dangerous. "But I have seen no peace from your kind. You come with promises, but we have learned to be wary of those who offer such things." Marcus was prepared for this. He knew that the Aetherans had a long history of being betrayed by other races, and their trust had to be earned. "I understand your doubt, Your Majesty," he said, "but I am here to prove that humans are different. We have no intention of betraying you. We wish only to build a future together, one of mutual respect." The queen circled Marcus, her eyes never leaving him. There was something intimidating about her presence. She was beautiful, yet deadly, a queen who commanded loyalty with a mere glance. "You speak well, human," she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "But words mean nothing to the Aetherans. We judge by action, not promises." She paused, her gaze sharp. "And you, human, have yet to prove yourself." Marcus swallowed hard but kept his composure. He knew what she meant. The Aetherans respected strength, not weakness. If he wanted to win her trust, he would need to demonstrate that he could stand on their level. "I understand," Marcus said. "What do you ask of me, Your Majesty?" The queen smiled again, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "I will test you, Captain Hawk. If you wish to earn our respect, you must survive our trial." A cold shiver ran down Marcus's spine, but he nodded. He had no choice but to accept. If he failed, he would never leave this place alive. "Prepare yourself, human," the queen said. "You will face the ultimate test. Only then will we decide if you are worthy of our alliance." Marcus was led away to prepare for the trial. He had no idea what awaited him, but he knew one thing for sure. This would be the most dangerous challenge of his life. Captain Marcus Hawk stood alone in the dimly lit chamber, the cold stone beneath his boots grounding him. His heart raced as he tried to focus on the task ahead. The Atheran Queen's trial was not something to be taken lightly. Whatever lay ahead, it would test him in ways he hadn't imagined. He wasn't sure what kind of trial the Queen had in mind, but he had no choice but to face it. His mission depended on it. He couldn't afford to fail, not when humanity's future was on the line. The door to the chamber suddenly creaked open, and a tall Atheran warrior stepped inside. He was heavily armored, his face hidden beneath a helmet, but the way he moved suggested he was someone of importance. "Captain Hawk," the warrior said in a deep, almost robotic tone, "the Queen has ordered that you face the trial of strength." Marcus didn't flinch. He had faced many challenges in his life, but this felt different. "What exactly is the trial?" he asked, his voice steady despite the nervousness creeping into his chest. The warrior motioned for him to follow. "You will face the beasts of Athora, the fiercest creatures our planet has to offer. If you survive, you will prove your worth." Marcus followed him through the winding halls of the fortress, his mind racing. He had heard rumors of the beasts that roamed this world, creatures of terrifying size and strength, each one more dangerous than the last. He had no weapons, no armor, and no allies. It was just him against whatever the queen had planned. They arrived at a large open arena, surrounded by high stone walls. The floor was made of rough stone, and there were large cages on either side, holding massive, snarling creatures. Marcus swallowed hard as the door to the arena opened, and the warrior gestured for him to enter. Without saying another word, the warrior turned and left, closing the door behind him with a loud bang. Marcus was left standing alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by the terrifying sounds of the creatures in their cages. He could feel their eyes on him, waiting for the signal to begin. Moments later, a loud horn sounded, signaling the start of the trial. The first beast was released. It emerged from its cage with a deafening roar, its enormous claws scraping against the stone as it charged toward Marcus. The creature was a massive, hulking beast, covered in thick, spiked armor. Its eyes were bloodshot and wild, and it looked at Marcus as if it saw him as nothing more than prey. Marcus had no time to think. He ducked to the side just as the beast lunged at him, narrowly avoiding its claws. The ground shook as the creature crashed into the stone wall behind him. It turned quickly, its eyes now locked on Marcus. He knew he had to move fast. He couldn't outrun the beast, but he could outthink it. He sprinted to the side, dodging its powerful swipes. He had no weapons, but he had his mind and his agility. He waited for the right moment, then used the beast's momentum against it. As it lunged again, Marcus rolled to the side and used the creature's weight to push it off balance. The beast staggered for a moment, and Marcus seized the opportunity. He leaped onto its back, his hands grasping its thick, spiked fur. Using all his strength, he pulled himself up and wrapped his arms around its neck, trying to choke it. The creature roared in fury, thrashing beneath him. It twisted and turned, but Marcus held on tight, refusing to let go. He had to finish this quickly. He had to survive. With one final, desperate effort, Marcus twisted its neck. The creature let out a final roar before collapsing to the ground, defeated. Marcus slid off its back, breathing heavily. His body was covered in sweat, his muscles aching. But he had done it. He had survived the first trial. As he stood up, he looked toward the stands, where the Atheran queen watched him closely, her piercing eyes never leaving him. Marcus had passed the first test, but he knew that much greater challenges awaited him. The trial was far from over. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, still catching his breath from the first trial. His body was sore from the struggle, but his resolve was stronger than ever. The first beast was down, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Atheran queen had made it clear that only the strongest could win her favor, and this trial would push him to his limits. The sounds of the creature's death echoed through the arena, but the silence that followed was even more chilling. Marcus looked around cautiously, his eyes darting from side to side. He could hear the movement in the cages, the soft growls of creatures waiting for their turn. His mind raced. What would be next? Suddenly, the loud horn blared again, signaling the start of the next trial. The ground beneath Marcus trembled slightly, and he glanced up, narrowing his eyes as the heavy gates at the far side of the arena began to open. A massive shadow appeared from behind the gates, and the crowd in the stands began to murmur. Marcus's heart skipped a beat as the creature stepped into the light. It was larger than the first beast, its body built like a tank, with thick, leathery skin and long, sharp tusks jutting from its face. The creature let out a deep growl, its eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The warrior who had guided Marcus before stepped forward, his voice booming across the arena. "This is the second trial. You must defeat the Atheran behemoth. If you succeed, you prove your strength." Marcus swallowed hard. This creature was nothing like the first. It was a brute force of nature, and he had no illusions about how hard this battle would be. He had to think fast, or he wouldn't make it out of this alive. The behemoth charged with terrifying speed for such a large creature, its tusks gleaming in the sunlight. Marcus quickly rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its first attack as the beast's tusks dug into the stone ground. The impact created a small tremor in the earth, and Marcus's heart raced. He had no time to waste. He needed to find a way to outsmart the creature. With his heart pounding, he darted around the behemoth, looking for a weak spot. Its thick skin made it almost invulnerable to most attacks, but Marcus noticed that its joints were more vulnerable. If he could get close enough, maybe he could strike there. The behemoth swung its tusks again, and Marcus ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as the tusks passed over his head. He could feel the beast's anger radiating from it, and he knew he had to be quick. He couldn't keep dodging forever. He was tiring out, and the behemoth was relentless. Marcus noticed a large rock at the far side of the arena. It was jagged and sharp, positioned just perfectly to give him some height. If he could reach it, he might be able to jump onto the behemoth's back. With a quick glance at the creature, he made his move. He sprinted toward the rock, the behemoth hot on his heels. The ground shook with every heavy footstep the beast took. Just as the creature lunged at him, Marcus jumped onto the rock, using its height to his advantage. He turned around to face the charging behemoth and leaped, grabbing onto one of its tusks as it rushed by. With all his strength, he pulled himself onto the behemoth's back, but the creature bucked violently, trying to throw him off. Marcus clenched his teeth, digging his fingers into the creature's thick hide. He quickly wrapped his legs around its body to steady himself, but the behemoth was not giving up easily. The beast swung its head from side to side, roaring in frustration, but Marcus held on tight. He knew he didn't have much time. He could feel the creature's muscles tensing, ready to throw him off. In that moment, Marcus made his move. He drew his knee up and slanted into the creature's vulnerable joint just behind its tusk. The behemoth let out a sharp, pained roar as its leg buckled beneath it. Marcus didn't stop. He continued to press his attack, using all his weight to force the creature's body to the ground. The behemoth struggled, but it was clear the fight was over. With one final, mighty effort, Marcus twisted and shoved the beast onto its side, pinning it. Exhausted and covered in sweat, Marcus stood up slowly, his legs shaking beneath him. He had done it. He had defeated the behemoth. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing throughout the arena. Marcus couldn't help but feel a surge of pride, but he knew this was only the second trial. The Queen had more tests for him, and he would need every ounce of strength he had left to survive them. As he stood there, breathing heavily, the Queen's voice rang out from the stands. "You have proven your strength, Earthling, but there is still much more to come." Marcus stood in the middle of the arena, his body still sore from the battles he had fought so far. He had just defeated the behemoth, a creature so terrifying that even the strongest of Aetherans feared it. But Marcus knew that the worst was still to come. The Queen had made it clear that strength alone wouldn't be enough to win her favor. The next trial was different. It was a test of the mind, not the body. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the arena, a voice echoed from the stands. The Queen's voice, smooth and powerful, cut through the silence. "The next trial will test your intellect, Earthling. We shall see if you are as clever as you are strong." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew he had to be ready. His mind had been trained in strategy and problem-solving, but he had never faced anything like this before. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. The floor split open with a loud crack, revealing a massive stone staircase that descended deep into the earth. The air grew cold, and a sense of foreboding filled the arena. The Queen's voice called out again, this time with a touch of amusement. "You must descend and solve the puzzle within. Fail, and you will remain trapped forever." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't hesitate. He knew there was no turning back. He stepped forward and began to descend the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the cold silence. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The walls were smooth and black, as though they had been carved by an ancient force. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus reached the bottom of the staircase. Before him was a massive stone door, its surface covered in strange symbols. There was no handle, no keyhole, just the symbols etched into the rock. At the center of the door was a large glowing gem, its light flickering in the dark. Marcus studied the door carefully. The symbols seemed to move, shifting as if they were alive. He reached out to touch one of them, and as his fingers brushed the stone, the symbols froze in place. A low rumble filled the air, and the Queen's voice echoed once again, this time with a challenge. The puzzle is simple, Earthling. The symbols are a code, and the gem is the key. Solve it, and you will pass. Fail, and you will remain trapped here forever. Marcus frowned, his mind racing. He had seen puzzles like this before. Complex, intricate, but solvable if you understood the logic behind them. He focused on the symbols, each one different from the others. Some were circular, others triangular, and some had sharp, angular lines. The more he looked, the more he realized that the symbols weren't just random. They formed a pattern. He began to work through the symbols, trying to match them to the patterns he had seen in other puzzles. His mind worked quickly, analyzing each symbol and its position on the door. The gem at the center of the door glowed brighter as he moved closer to solving the puzzle. Suddenly, it clicked. He reached out and pressed the symbol that matched the final piece of the puzzle. A loud click sounded, and the stone door began to open slowly, revealing the narrow hallway beyond. Marcus stepped through the doorway, feeling the weight of the Queen's challenge lift from his shoulders. He had solved the puzzle, but he knew this wasn't the end. The trials were far from over. He had proven his strength, and now his mind had been tested. But what would the Queen throw at him next? As he walked down the narrow hallway, he could feel the weight of the journey pressing on him. The trials were designed to break him, to push him to his limits, but he wasn't going to give up. He had come this far, and he would keep going. He would prove himself worthy of the Queen's favor, no matter what it took. The hallway opened up into a large chamber, and in the center of the room stood a pedestal, on which lay a strange, glowing object. The object pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. Marcus walked toward it, his curiosity piqued. What was it? A reward for passing the trial. As he reached out to touch the object, the ground beneath him began to shake again. The Queen's voice boomed from above. The final trial awaits, Earthling. Prepare yourself. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that whatever came next, he would face it with everything he had. This was just the beginning. Marcus stood in the center of the large chamber, his heart pounding. The eerie glow of the strange object on the pedestal flickered like a heartbeat, casting long shadows on the stone walls. He knew the final trial was approaching, and the tension in the air made it feel like the entire world was holding its breath. The Queen's voice boomed through the chamber once more, filled with a mix of power and amusement. You have passed every test so far, Earthling, but the final trial will be unlike anything you have faced. It is not one of strength or intellect, but of heart. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What did she mean? Heart. Was this some kind of test of character, a trial to see if he could remain true to himself? He didn't know, but he wasn't about to back down now. He had already come so far. With a deep breath, Marcus stepped closer to the pedestal, his fingers hovering just above the glowing object. As his hand made contact, the object pulsed brightly, sending a wave of energy through the room. The walls began to shift, and the floor beneath him cracked open. Before he could react, a blinding light filled the chamber. Suddenly, Marcus found himself in a completely different place. He was standing on a vast, empty battlefield, the sky overhead dark and stormy. The air was thick with the scent of rain and tension. The ground was soft, almost like a sponge, and with each step, his feet sank into the mud. In front of him stood a massive army of Atherans, all of them fierce and imposing. Their eyes glowed red with anger, and their weapons gleamed in the dim light. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He was outnumbered, and the odds were stacked against him. The battlefield was alive with energy, and he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows, an Atheran soldier, much larger than the rest, with a face twisted in fury. The soldier's eyes locked onto Marcus with an intense glare, as if daring him to fight. The queen's voice echoed in his mind, cold and distant. "This is your final trial, Earthling. You must defeat the army before you, but only by making the right choice. You cannot rely on strength or brute force alone. Choose wisely, for the consequences will be dire." Marcus took a step back, confusion swirling in his mind. How could he defeat an entire army with nothing but his wits? There was no way he could overpower them. He looked around, trying to think of a plan, but everything about the battlefield seemed designed to intimidate him. The soldier in front of him raised a weapon, and the rest of the army followed suit, their eyes filled with bloodlust. They moved toward him, ready to strike. Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't fight them all, but maybe that was the point. The queen wanted him to make a decision, a choice that would define who he was. He couldn't win through violence, but perhaps he could win through something else. As the soldiers drew closer, Marcus suddenly remembered his first encounter with the queen. She had seen something in him, something different. He had not been like the others, not relying on his strength, but on his understanding of others. Perhaps this was his test, to choose compassion over conflict, to see the truth in the situation. Taking a deep breath, Marcus lowered his stance and raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I don't want to fight you," he called out to the soldiers, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I don't want to kill. I want to find another way." The soldiers stopped in their tracks, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. But Marcus didn't flinch. He looked at the leader, the massive warrior who had challenged him, and saw something more than rage in his eyes. He saw doubt. "Do you really want to fight?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but firm. "Do you truly believe this battle will make anything better, or will it just bring more suffering?" For a long moment, there was silence. The storm raged overhead, but the soldiers didn't move. Marcus felt the weight of their gaze on him, and slowly he began to see something change in their expressions. Their weapons lowered. Then the leader of the Aetherans spoke, his voice heavy but thoughtful. "Perhaps you are right." The air around them seemed to shift. The tension that had been thick in the air began to dissolve, and Marcus realized that he had done it. He had passed the final test, not through fighting, but through understanding and compassion. The battlefield faded away, and Marcus was back in the chamber with the glowing pedestal. The queen's voice echoed once more, this time with respect. "You have shown wisdom beyond your years, Earthling. You have passed the final trial." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He had made it. He had proven himself not through strength, but through his heart. Marcus stood before the glowing pedestal, his heart still racing from the final trial. He had not expected it to be so difficult, but now he knew the queen had been testing more than his strength. She had tested his spirit, his heart, and his understanding of others. And in the end, it was those qualities that had allowed him to succeed. As the chamber around him began to settle, the queen's voice filled the room again. But this time, it held an unexpected tone. "Respect. You have passed all tests, Earthling. And now you have earned your reward." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, but even as he stood victorious, he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was coming. He had won her respect, but what did that truly mean? Was this where he would finally learn why he had been brought here? Before he could ask, the ground beneath him began to tremble. The pedestal pulsed with a strange light, and the walls of the chamber shifted once more, revealing a new path. It was narrow and dark, leading deep into the heart of the palace. The air was thick with mystery, and Marcus knew he couldn't turn back now. "Follow the path ahead," the queen's voice instructed. "The answers you seek lie beyond." With a deep breath, Marcus stepped forward, his feet echoing on the stone floor. The passage was long and winding, and he couldn't help but feel the weight of uncertainty in the air. What would he find at the end of this journey? He didn't know, but he was determined to find out. As he walked, he thought about the queen, the powerful, proud ruler who had tested him time and again. He had come here to prove himself, to show that humanity had something to offer in this strange and dangerous galaxy. But now, it seemed there was more at stake than just a simple test of strength. He had learned more than he could have imagined. After what felt like hours of walking, Marcus finally reached the end of the path. He found himself in a vast chamber, even grander than the one where the trials had taken place. In the center of the room stood a throne, but this throne was unlike any other. It was massive, ancient, and carved with strange symbols that seemed to glow with a power of their own. Sitting upon the throne was the queen herself, but she was different now, no longer the imposing figure who had tested him, but someone more vulnerable. Her expression was softer, and her eyes held a mixture of sadness and longing. "You have made it," she said, her voice quieter than before. "But the real challenge is just beginning, Earthling." Marcus didn't know what she meant, but he could feel the weight of her words. He approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. This wasn't the queen he had come to know, the powerful ruler who had demanded respect and obedience. This was something else. "I did not bring you here to conquer you, Earthling," she continued, her voice tinged with regret. "I brought you here because I saw something in you, something that I lost long ago." Marcus was confused. What was she talking about? What had she lost? "I am not the ruler you think I am," the queen said, standing up from her throne. "I am not invincible. I am not without weaknesses. I have been alone for so long, and I thought I could keep my heart locked away forever. But I was wrong." Marcus could see the pain in her eyes. It was a pain he recognized. He had felt it too, in his own way. He had lost things in his life, things that had shaped who he was, and he could understand the loneliness in her gaze. You want help, don't you?" Marcus asked softly, his voice full of understanding. The queen's eyes flickered with surprise, but then slowly she nodded. "Yes, I have been alone for too long, and perhaps I need more than just a strong ruler. Perhaps I need someone who understands me, someone who will see me as more than just a queen." Marcus stepped forward, his heart racing again. The atmosphere had shifted. This was no longer about strength or proving himself. It was about connection, about understanding the deeper bonds that tied them all together. "Maybe that's what I've been looking for too," Marcus said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I came here to prove humanity's worth, but I think we all need someone to stand with us. Not just to fight, but to heal, to connect." The queen's eyes softened, and for the first time, Marcus saw her truly vulnerable. She was no longer the powerful, untouchable ruler. She was someone who had been carrying the weight of her own kingdom for far too long. And now she was looking for something more, someone to stand beside her. The moment hung between them, thick with unspoken understanding. It was a moment neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. Marcus stood beside the queen, both of them looking out over the vast, star-filled expanse that stretched beyond the palace. The weight of the journey seemed to settle into the air around them, thick with unspoken words. Yet neither of them felt the need to fill the silence. It was as if the quiet was a bond in itself, one that grew stronger each time they shared it. For so long, Marcus had been focused on one thing: survival. His mind had been set on proving himself, on facing each challenge that came his way. But now, everything felt different. The queen wasn't just an alien ruler to be conquered. She wasn't just a test. She was someone who had faced struggles too, someone who had been carrying the burden of leadership alone for longer than he could imagine. "Do you ever feel like you're not meant to be the ruler of this place?" Marcus asked softly, his eyes still on the stars. "Like there's more to your life than this throne?" The queen turned to him, her expression softening. She had never let herself express doubt, not to anyone. But something in Marcus made her feel that she could finally be honest. Every day, she admitted. Her voice was quiet, full of the weight of years spent ruling alone. I was born into this role, forced into it. And at first, I thought power would fill the emptiness inside. But it never did. I've been surrounded by people who only saw the queen, not the person. It's lonely. Her gaze shifted to the ground, her shoulders tense with the weight of her own words. Marcus could understand. He had felt lonely in his life too, even among people. There was always something missing, something that didn't quite fit. But here, now with the queen, he realized that they shared something deeper than just survival or leadership. They shared a desire for connection, for someone who could see past the roles they were forced into. "You don't have to do this alone," Marcus said, his voice filled with sincerity. "You're not just a queen. You're someone who deserves to have someone by her side, someone who sees you for who you are, not just for the throne you sit on." The queen's eyes flickered with something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. "I never thought I would find someone who understood," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you, Earthling, you see me. And for the first time, I feel like I'm not alone." Marcus reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. He could feel the warmth of her skin, the subtle strength beneath her armor. She was a powerful ruler, but she was also human in her own way, vulnerable, searching for something more than just control. In that moment, Marcus realized that he wasn't just standing beside a queen. He was standing beside someone who had been through battles of her own, someone who had fought loneliness, pain, and the crushing weight of expectations. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for both of them to stop fighting their inner struggles alone. "You don't have to be the queen all the time," Marcus said, his words slow and steady. "You can be you. You can just be, with someone who gets it." The queen's lips trembled slightly, and for a brief second, Marcus saw her mask crack. Behind the strength, the power, and the unyielding will, there was someone who had been waiting for the chance to open up. She had been waiting for someone who wouldn't try to conquer her, someone who would offer her a hand instead. She met his gaze, her voice shaky but determined. "And what if I let you in? What if I let you see all of me? The ruler, the warrior, and the woman who's been hiding from it all." Marcus smiled, a genuine warmth filling his chest. "Then I'll be here for all of it. You don't have to hide. Not with me." For the first time in years, the queen allowed herself to smile. It wasn't the smile of a ruler, but the smile of a woman who had found something rare: trust, understanding, and maybe even the possibility of something more. And for Marcus, it was the moment when everything changed. It wasn't about the throne. It wasn't about the tests. It was about the bond they had forged, a bond built on mutual understanding and the courage to stand together. No more games, no more masks, just two beings, side by side, facing whatever challenges the future might bring. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the world. The wind whispered softly through the trees, as if the land itself was at peace. For the first time in a long while, Marcus and the queen stood together, feeling the weight of the world lift from their shoulders. It was a quiet evening, but it carried the promise of something more. Marcus looked at the queen, his heart filled with a new sense of hope. He had spent so much time thinking about survival, thinking about battles and wars, but now he realized that the true victory lay in understanding each other, in the trust they had built, in the connection they had formed. The queen, too, felt something shift inside her. All her life, she had been surrounded by people who saw her only as a symbol of power. She had been burdened with the crown, the responsibilities, and the expectations of her people. But Marcus had never seen her as a ruler first. He had seen her as a person, as someone with feelings, dreams, and fears. It was something she never thought she would experience: true connection. "I never imagined this would happen," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of wonder and uncertainty. "That I would find someone who truly sees me, who doesn't want to use me, but wants to be with me. For me. Marcus stepped closer, his gaze soft and steady. You deserve to be seen, not as a queen, but as yourself. You don't have to hide behind your title. You're not just a ruler. You're a person, and I'm here, no matter what. The queen's heart swelled with emotion. For so long, she had fought to be more than just the queen of her people. She had struggled with loneliness, with the pressure of her position. But now, standing here with Marcus, she realized that she could be more. She could be herself. With him, she didn't have to wear a mask. She could be free. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. And what about you, Marcus? What do you want from all of this? From me? He smiled, the warmth in his eyes unmistakable. I want to stand beside you, to fight beside you, to be with you, not because of your title, but because of who you are. You're not just a queen. You're someone I want to share my life with. The queen's heart fluttered at his words. She had never expected to hear such sincerity. She had spent so long pushing people away, afraid that they only saw her for what she represented. But Marcus was different. He didn't care about her power. He cared about her, the woman who carried burdens, but also held the capacity for love, strength, and hope. I've always been afraid, the queen confessed, her voice trembling slightly. Afraid of being used, afraid of never being enough. But with you, I feel safe. I feel like I don't have to hide anymore. Marcus reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm not going anywhere. You have me. All of me. A peaceful silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence full of understanding, full of shared experiences. The world around them had been chaotic, filled with wars and struggles, but now, in this moment, there was calm. The queen looked up at the stars, her gaze softening. Maybe this is what I needed all along. Not more power, not more land, just someone who understands, someone who will stand by me. Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand. I'm here, no matter what. We'll face whatever comes together. Not as a queen and her servant, but as two people ready for a future. For the first time, the queen allowed herself to believe in a future beyond her throne, a future where love, trust, and partnership could be the foundation of her reign. With Marcus by her side, she knew they could face anything. As they stood there, hand in hand, the future seemed right. And together, they would write the next chapter of their story, one where the weight of power no longer controlled them, but love and trust did. It was the beginning of something new, something beautiful, and they were ready for it.